advertising, we're not talking right now about advertising, but advertising or promoting yourself or the business is repetitive. Well, so is things that you want to sink in. But compliance or ethics is a huge part of it. And you should have non-negotiables in your business. If it's performance standards and it's quoting in our business, if it's quoting and talk time, well, that's a non-negotiable.
Got questions, we bring the facts. From proven pros who walk the tracks. Business life, no smoke, just flames. Ask the experts, David Williams brings the game.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Ask the Experts. I'm going to be your host today, Andy Arter, and today we have an incredible guest with us, somebody who embodies what long-term leadership, consistency, and service in the insurance industry really looks like. Joining us today is none other than Jay Esterson, one of the most respected and seasoned agency owners in the entire Allstate ecosystem, with 37 years of experience serving South Florida families and building high-performing teams for decades. A little bit of background, Jay, before we get started, just so our audience can get to know you. Jay was born and raised right in South Florida, one of my favorite places on planet Earth, and he spent his entire career giving back to the community that he loves. A graduate of University of South Florida with a degree in finance, Jay's early foundation was built on teamwork and competition, shaped by years on the baseball field and a lifelong passion for the Miami Dolphins and Miami Heat. His Allstate journey began actually all the way back in 1989. So inside of the Boca Raton corporate office, starting in human resources. And then over the next 7 years, he worked through multiple HR roles before taking his talents to the Sun Sentinel as a human resources manager. And then in 1999, Allstate sales leader Bob White invited him back, and that return would become a defining chapter in your life, Jay. Jay, you stepped into a sales management trainee role and went on to serve as market sales manager for a decade, earning numerous leadership, growth, and performance awards. But Jay, I know you had the entrepreneurial itch that itch knocked on the door of your heart. And so you transitioned into agency ownership, purchasing your first 2 agencies in Plantation. And then over the last 21 years, I know you've acquired 5 agencies, built a team of 10 talented professionals, and created an organization known for excellence in service, growth, and community commitment. So today, Jay, I know you live in Cooper City. We used to go down there to Potential Church, actually, in Cooper City, my wife and I. And you've been married to Olga. You 2 beloved pups, which we're dog owners as well. And we're not going to do a full episode on dogs today, even though I'd love to. And you're still passionate about building relationships, mentoring others, and elevating the standard of service in our industry. And just a side note before we get started, I've had a chance to work with Jay now for several months in 2025 and experience the way that he helps network people, the way he's a connector as well, which I think is super, super valuable in the industry. So for a lot of reasons, we're super honored to have you with us today, Jay, and good morning to you. And thanks for being with us. How are you?
Good morning, Andy. A pleasure. I feel honored to. And that after hearing that bio, I feel like, whoa, the gray hair is really kicking in. I've been doing this for, I've been in the business world, in the corporate world, the business world for 37 years. It's been great and fast. I'll tell you that.
I thought you were born into Allstate and you're 37 years old. So you had me backwards this morning. I'm a bit confused now, but it's incredible to see like your background, because I think coming from a human resources background, your pedigree of understanding people first, probably has led to a lot of the way that you run your various businesses. But I think also one of the reasons I was really excited to have you on is having the vantage point of being like a corporate leader within the Allstate network and then flipping to the opposite side of being an agency. That's pretty unique. And there's not many people out there who have made the switch from the corporate world into the entrepreneurial world as an agent. So I can't wait to pull from some of the lessons that you've learned, because it's just a very unique journey that not many people share. So I know you've spent, a lot of your career serving the South Florida community, and, that's been a big part of your journey. What I'd like to understand is going all the way back to 1989. What was it like starting at Allstate's Boca Raton corporate office in HR? Like what did that gig look like? And what was your first couple of years? What was a day in the life essentially? What were you doing?
Yeah, and Andy, it's pretty fascinating, the journey now, and even with it involved in within myself and the Allstate organization. Change is inevitable. And when we start talking about 1989, it's quite amazing. I went up there to Boca Raton. I lived at the time down in Hollywood, Florida, and basically my sister's husband's best friend was working as a sales manager at Allstate, because my sister's 11 years older than me, so there was an age gap. I was 24. He was in his late 30s already at Allstate. He's like, hey, I don't know what the job's about, but there's an opening at Allstate in Boca. Go interview. So I go up there on the tri-rail. That must have been the first or second year of tri-rail in Florida. So I'm really dating myself. I go up there, interview, really don't know what I'm interviewing for. Don't have no expectation. I'm in Boca Raton. I just know I wanted to wear a suit and I wanted to carry a briefcase, right, out of college. So I was pretty excited about that. So when I get up there in the human resource function, I actually engaged it and started to really love it. And the part that I loved about it, yes, I was on the corporate side. Allstate and Boca, to give you a little idea, they started that region maybe a year before. So Allstate was in such a growth mode as a corporation in around 1989. And Boca Raton was, the average age in there was probably 26 years old. The top senior managers in Boca Raton were 42 years old. It was a young region. So we had a lot of vibrant, we were getting in there. On top of working hard, we had a lot of playtime after. We build relationships. All my relationships started there, and I have 20 or 30 of them today. When we could talk about some of those and how that helped my journey. And I mentioned Bob White. I think you mentioned Bob White, but there's other ones. He's my mentor at Allstate. He was a corporate manager at that time. But human resources is a great function because I got to learn how to deal with people. And really, entrepreneurship will lead into that. We'll talk maybe a little bit about that. As being entrepreneurs, it's not just product, it's not just sales, it's actually connecting people and working with your team and building your team, and then building the external, your clients as well.
Amen.
It was unique. It was unique starting out for sure. Great opportunity.
Yeah, and we're going to transition into the market sales leader era, right? But prior to that, I want to make a difference for the audience to understand that the HR type division, probably a very different flavor from a market leader type position. And so what would you say was kind of the main docket workload or mission of that HR department? Was it in helping maintain internal employees within the corporate side? Was it helping on the HR side within agencies? Was it in recruiting? What was it specifically that was on the mission?
Yeah, that's a good, these are some, we have a lot of things that we can address in a way of what, from an expert standpoint of what you learn in one area, become an expert to get to the next area. In human resources, when we started out, recruiting was a big thing for the field. The field was made up of two things: our sales force at Allstate and our claim department. I mean, that was the main two functions. We had some internal functions, finance, marketing, but the two big fields, we called them. And I had the opportunity as a young human resource rep, and I worked my way up getting promoted within human resources within Allstate, is I had the claim and I've had the sales. So I had to do, was involved in dealing, I'm 24, 25 years old. I had to deal with 45, 50-year-old leaders of a claims department. I had to know how to maneuver with them. I had to understand what their wants were, what they expected from me on recruiting, and then employee relations. There's a lot that goes. I had to deal with situations when you had you might have sexual harassment. You might have people not showing up to work. You might have performance issues. They would have to come to me, these leaders, and say, Jay, I need some guidance from a human resource perspective of how we handle these situations. So I was thrown into some very important things that I had to deal with at an early age that really I got to really tone my skills. I remember writing my first letter, to the field. Remember, I didn't grow up with the iPhone. We didn't even have computers on our desk at Allstate. It's fascinating. I had to handwrite a letter, send it to my manager to review, and then have a secretary, actually, which the term, I hate that term, but a secretary would type up your letter. So, and then I remember my conversations with my bosses at the time was, that letter's not well written, Jay. It doesn't look too well. So, it's basically, being able to accept the challenge of criticism. I think today when you're dealing with people, there's sometimes coaching and criticism gets overlapped. And I think some of our other generations get, I have a young staff too, and we're leading younger people. If you're at a certain age, sometimes there's challenges with that on how you approach it. So I had to learn all that on an early stage, and that really formed myself on, the next level. If I want to get into sales management, and I think you mentioned it a little bit, how did that happen? I can talk a little bit if you want me to, on how that evolved into that area. But it is two different things. Human resources is a big thing, but you bridge into different disciplines, and it really does come down to dealing with people, no matter what function you're in. It's important.
Yeah, I had a friend in college, and their dad was like the HR manager for a very large grocery chain out in Pennsylvania. And like he would get calls throughout the day for anything from sexual harassment to, an issue with a leader to, payroll issues, like just all over the place, kind of the deep, dark side of the business that has to be handled. So I'm really curious what the biggest things were that you learned about people and HR during those years that like still carry to today in your
I really believe this. I think besides my mom and dad's guidance with ethics, that was a big piece. Going into human resources developed a core function of ethics for me. Huge. And I'm going to give you a little example. I had to deal with corporate security, which is internal, and the Allstate family is corporate security, they're lawyers. And we had to go for an investigation, and they always need a witness from the corporate side, even though they're on the corporate side, but from the local corporate side. So we had to go to a senior manager's house at 7:00 at night and knock on the door. And corporate security identified themselves and said, we're looking for some receipts of a product that you have outside. You have some jet skis outside your house. And we'd like to see you purchased that. We would like to see the receipt. I think the senior manager at the time was from claims, was very surprised. And they said, well, let me go in the house. I'll get that. I'll be right back. We waited 2 to 3 hours outside. So now it's 10:00 at night. And I'm like, okay, I'm dealing with the lawyer. We're talking about, I'm kind of understanding what the situation is. He's filling me in. And the point is, I had to learn how to maneuver someone I thought at a very high level, but there's ethics involved. And it came out to be eventually 2-3 hours later, they came out and says, we can't find the receipt, which looking back at it now, obviously in all my years, I'm pretty sure that would have been the response. He was probably expecting that. I didn't know what to expect. And then it came out that the outcome it wasn't good. It was probably a kickback that came from a vendor.
Wow.
And that person was terminated from the organization. So my point to that is I started learning some ethics. That's one example. We had so many different cases that I had to be involved in, and then I had to learn what confidentiality means. I had to really grasp that when you're in the corporate world and you're in a position of responsibility, confidentiality is a big piece of it, and ethics. And that was a big core thing that I took out of being in human resource. But I think that helped me, Andy, and my parents, lay the foundation on how I run my business, how I run my family, how I run the personal side as well as the business. I think the personal side is just as important as the business side. So that was a real big core element of what I learned. Especially, I learned a million things in here, but that was a real core element.
Wow, that's incredible. And I wrote and underlined the word ethics, right? And that's like a very stark example of somebody like in a non-ethical situation,
right? Very
black and white. You have to identify it. You have to do something about it and take responsibility for it. And one of the things that like I want to just get your idea on is that one of the businesses, when I moved down to Hollywood, Florida for 3 years, and I worked for a business down there, the big buzzword in the company was always ethics. Mm-hmm. And ethics wasn't always like, don't steal money. Like, don't steal money. But sometimes ethics was like literally an ethic about work. Like here, we ethically need to follow up our customer. We ethically need to, if you commit to making 200 calls, you'll make the 200 calls. And whenever somebody didn't do what they said they would do, they would consider that to be a non-ethical business practice. Like you could have asked for help, but instead you said you were doing it and you didn't do it. And so I started to learn that like ethics could also mean work ethic, habits, expectations, things like that. And I'm curious if you have kind of experienced the same in your career and leadership with your team and other teams. where like, how far does ethics stretch within the arms of the business in your experience?
It's the foundation for everything. Like you just said, we get situations with like, an ethics, illegal and ethics in a corporation, especially, is two different things or a business. Some people will confuse that, right? And I'm one to clarify. I'm a common sense person. I want to make sure my team is very common sense and how we handle our clients. Ethics is in both arenas. It's really the foundation of that. But yes, work ethic, and you can lose ethic in that regard, is really starts with ethics usually from a personal level. But ethics is something you see work ethic with anybody you've managed or anybody a peer or superior or has a level different than you. You see it right away. Work ethic. Work ethic is someone that has their own goals, basically. They come in, they have their own goals, they have their own determination, they have their own vision of what they want to accomplish, they have their personal and professional objectives that they want to obtain, and you can see that in an individual. I try to mentor staff in that area. Now, I've succeeded and I have failed, okay, in that arena. I've had staff and I've had good managers around me, and I've had good mentors and peers, and I go to them and say, look, I'm not doing something right. What can I learn from you? Tell me what I could do differently here. And sometimes they'll tell me is you can't change sometimes core values. And if you have in the business world, if you're managing people and you see that you can't change a core value or you're not comfortable with something and you've tried to coach it and it doesn't work, sometimes you just have to move on from that situation if they're not being able to perform, at the level that you want your organization to show up for your clients or not. And that's it. Really, to me, everything goes back to ethics. It does. And in discussing that, it's a big piece what you see in the work ethic too.
Yeah, I don't think anybody of all the experts we've had on here has brought up the word ethics specifically and talked about how important it is. So I really appreciate you kind of diving through that. I think it's a really good reminder. And if somebody on here is thinking to myself like, wow, I don't have that in check. I've got all sorts of unethical stuff happening because I see it all the time, and then, it's easy to be held hostage to an employee that's maybe not 100% ethical, but, they're writing plenty of business, so I'll kind of let it slide. And I love the whole non-negotiable, like we're going to be ethical through and through.
Andy, it's a topic that I'm big on. And I just had this situation. I get it, not a lot, because I have a very experienced team. They know where we stand. At the end of every huddle or every staff meeting, I hit on compliance within the organization of my business within 10 minutes. We do a 10-minute huddle about it at the end. And they hear it and they hear, advertising. We're not talking right now about advertising, but advertising or promoting yourself or the business is repetitive. Well, so is things that you want to sink in. But compliance or ethics is a huge part of it. And you should have non-negotiables in your business. If it's performance standards and it's quoting in the MAR business, if it's quoting and talk time, well, that's a non-negotiable. If it's ethics or compliance, that's a non-negotiable. So I had a staff member chat me 3-4 days ago, a good staff member, and I know the ethics is high. This person's been with me a long time. Said to me, hey, I got a 6-car policy I'm getting ready to write. And she was excited. You could hear it through the chat. It was through my chat. You can hear it in the text. So, and she says, what do you think? One car is registered in the business. And she's waiting for my response. If my response is not to me where it should be, she'll run with it. If she's waiting to see my leadership in that area, it's almost like a test. It's almost like your wife saying to you, go out, have a good time at the Heat game last night. You don't have to come home tonight. That's a test. Usually that's a test, right? You got to come, if you're married, you got to come home. So my point is and I said, I don't want to say her name, but I said, staff member such, I said, what do you think? Because we can't do that. I would look for some solutions. Have you asked the customer to go change the registration on that one car? And we'll be happy to write it. Did you ask the customer? I gave her option 2. Did you ask the customer to write the 5 cars or 4 cars and take one car, keep it with the other company until they're ready? Because we will have a claim situation. In the event, you tell the customer, in the event there's a claim, me as your agent, meaning her, I can't do a disservice to you and take something for a sale or to bring you over if it's going to disadvantage you and it's going to be a bad situation to claim. When I told her, when you show that to the client, they have more respect for you than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And those are examples. And to your point, yes, you have to manage that. You can't give, did I want the 6-car policy? Yes, but not at any cost. That's a non-negotiable. That is a not there. You have, as an owner, you should have a vision plan of your agency, a mission plan, vision plan. We have a vision board and a mission plan. And then you should have non-negotiables that you cover with your staff, usually weekly or monthly. You at least got to do it. And those are big things that I've always done. I did that when I was a sales manager as well. I have examples of that when I moved I jumped over to an agent owner, but there's also the middle of my career was a sales manager. I would walk into a very seasoned, successful owner who looked at me as probably a young corporate guy and said, he doesn't know anything. But I would instill those values. I try to in that owner on saying, you don't want to risk everything here for that, do you? Mm-hmm. Ask questions and see what the responses are. But those are some examples. With my team, it is a non-negotiable in those areas.
Man, 100. Thank you for the stories too. Just to give like a relevant situation, right? Of that 6-car auto situation. That's a real deal. And the same is true for an owner, right? Like if they're hanging onto a list that they know isn't scrubbed, but they want to pop it into their dialer and call it anyway, even though it could expose them to TCPA. I think agency owners themselves are faced with all sorts of things like that on the marketing side. And, instead of, trying to figure out a better way to play the game with the rule set, you still see agency owners in the quiet of their office with nobody around to hold them accountable. Also, they've got to make those decisions on ethical marketing and ethical outreach. And at the end of the day, what you said about the client's going to respect you if you're above board, I totally see that. And it's like, truth sells, and you don't need to cheat your way into a sale. And if the business doesn't align, it doesn't align. But what it reminds me of too, Jay, is there's a very, very large successful auto group in South Florida called the Rick Case Automotive Group. They carry some of the highest sale Honda stores in the entire nation. So by arms and legs, they're a multi-billion-dollar organization. Well, the operator who helped Rick and Rita Case build that group from the inside out is a guy by the name of JJ Giacontelli. I think he's at Coral Springs Auto Mall now, but when he was with Rick Case, their whole thing was that they would make firm decisions that these are the non-negotiables from an ethical standpoint, from a activity standpoint, from a customer service standpoint, from a attire standpoint, training, like non-negotiable. If you're in our business, you train every day, and if not, you're gone. And he got on stage in 2017 at a 10X conference. And basically the whole talk was about how important it is to build non-negotiables into your business. So part of being non-negotiable is also having to be a leader and make tough decisions, right? You have to cut somebody loose sometimes, or you have to lay that line down. And you like non-negotiable means non-negotiable. It's not like a pretty idea, but it's necessary. So I love as you're talking about this, like you're in alignment with one of the best auto groups in the entire nation. And that was their operating manual. Like before sales process, before marketing strategy was non-negotiable ethics within the business. So it's really, really cool to see that synchronicity. And you and JJ would probably get along very, very well. So
and I happen to know that the Chase. It's funny that I'm down the road. We bought our grandson a Honda from there, so I actually had a good relationship with the sales manager there. It's like you mentioned, they're a top-notch organization. When you see a top-notch organization, you feel it. Mm-hmm. As a client, you see it. That's what I want from our agency. I tell my team, I want them to looked at as experts in the insurance industry, because it does a couple things. One, it builds trust. Two, it builds a foundation. And three, you're going to get referrals like crazy. And that's the best success any organization can have, is building referrals based on your performance in the ethical and response time and empathy and all these things that we have to do. Because in today's world, we know inflation is going crazy. We know people are stressed out. I train my team on all that. I like everybody is dealing with something when they call us or we call our clients. Have empathy, think about that, have ethics. Another examples. There's lots of examples. We have non-negotiables. When I took over the agency and I bought my first one in 2004 from two senior guys. They had a philosophy is when we don't put young drivers on it. When the parents call in, don't put a young driver on the policy. It's okay. That is escaping the proper premium for the corporation. That's number one. Number two is you're putting at risk that the claim might not be covered for that person that you just gave that advice to. And that would be a very bad situation for both. Okay. So, we came in as a philosophy is that I teach my team is in using the ethics as a foundation is give the clients or give anybody you deal with in a relationship, if you're in a leadership position, give people the whys. If you give the whys, I tell them they might not agree with it, but they'll understand it. They don't have to agree. So if a client calls in, you say, look, you have to put Johnny, he has a driver's license, state of Florida. We need to put him on because our policy is written that if he gets into an accident, you're going to get sued, and you're not on the policy. That claim could be denied. You're putting your assets at risk. I won't do it. No, but I'm not going to do it. If that happens, I almost don't want you as a client because I'm giving you the advice that you need and you don't want to, if you don't want to take it, I can't help you. And it's okay sometimes to fire a client. I think agents live in this world, and I'm on all these social medias, and I have a lot of agents that call me, and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't lose this customer. They don't want to add the child because it's $800." It's part of being a parent. You have to put them on the policy. It's expensive, yes. Have empathy for that. Look for the right discounts. Do everything we need to do as advisors. But that's back to the ethics, the training. Leadership is not always fun. It's lonely at the top, but I will tell you, it's rewarding if you do it the right way.
Such good stuff. And I want to reserve some time to transition into the next two major phases of your life. And I know this is going to be a common theme, I think, through them, right? But one of the things too is like when you transition in to become a market leader, now you're in a role where you are, advising probably some new, some medium, and some very tenured agency owners that have their own staff and they've got their own situations and their own sales quotas. And you come in to support them without being able to tell them exactly what they, have to do to grow their business. But I know a big aspect of that is not just HR and compliance and programs, but it's also helping them drive more growth, right? And you're on the other side of that now, but I'd be really curious what some of the biggest challenges were where you saw maybe owners that were stubborn, maybe things that frustrated you to where it was like, if you would just do X, Y, and Z, John, like you could go from here to there as an agency, but they wouldn't. Like, what did you learn in that role before we transition to your time as an agency owner about agency owners? Like that was a really good school for you, I feel, before becoming an owner yourself. But what were the biggest challenges in that role, trying to like push the needle forward as a corporate leader, supporting those guys on the back end?
These are great conversations. I'm a talker. I love to share. And so I keep my eye on the time too. I'm like, oh man, we could talk for hours on this.
I know, right?
But I will tell you that is, when I took over the sales management role, I was in a younger, part of my career. So I felt, a lot of the times the agents were senior agents. I will tell you the two biggest things as a sales manager I had to overcome with agency owners, and that was even back then, was change. Okay. Most people resist change. We're seeing it in our country. We're seeing it in the business world. We see it all around in politics. We see it personally. Change is hard. And I just had this text. I'm on a group text with 10 owners. And I just texted this, I don't know, a week ago. I love change. So I'm not just saying this because I'm on a podcast, this is who I am. I love change. Now, I don't always love compensation stuff because that, you got to look at revenue and manage P&L. So outside of that, but I like change. And when I came in as sales managers, most owners fail because they get caught up in the day-to-day and they don't think about how to invest in the business versus just investing their own time only in the business and really doing the same processes or the same task every day over and over, because that's what they're told when they wake up they should be doing in their mind. You have to look for efficiencies in your business. You need to look for there's different solutions. How do I put some capital into the business? And that's sometimes where the 20% of the agency force in the Allstate function system fails in my mind. Here, they're not failing in product. They're not failing in using the computer. They're not failing in knowing how to process, how to take, how to answer the phone and help a customer on a phone with service endorsements, but they fail here in change. And if we don't change as owners, You got to look at stuff and put them in. I put them in boxes, and I said, every year my business is going to get efficient in 3 boxes. Now, in those 3 boxes, because we can't handle 10 boxes because that's overload. Mm-hmm. You kind of zone in on 3 things that you can change, and you got to absorb that and figure out how you invest more in the business for long-term sustainability. If you're only going to do this for 6 months, don't change. Just do what you got to do and do what you got to do. You're going to be in this for a long period of time. You got to think. You got to start thinking. And I will tell you, if you're going to be in the organization, you don't have to agree with everything, but you got to build trust. If you're not going to trust, it really comes down from there. And then you put these roadblocks up. And when you put these roadblocks up, you don't succeed because you're holding yourself back for different reasons you're telling yourself. So, as a sales manager, I had to go in there and try to show and demonstrate. Okay. It wasn't just talk. You got to give these owners. So I went into a senior owners and I give them the whys. You got to get to know them. You can't go. I think sales managers that fail in other organizations, even today, is everything they paint I talk to Andy, Joe, Mary, Sam, Bob, all the same way. You have to go in and understand where they're at. Where are they at in their career? What is their personal goals? Do they looking to retire? Are they looking to expand? Are they looking to have another business? Are they looking to send their family, and have a summer home? Like, you got to know what some of their personal goals are. Then you'll start to understand how the business makes sense. And then you go to an agent who's trying to grow. How do you launch him? You got one who's not senior agent. Maybe they have other goals that they don't want to obtain. And then you have a growing agent in the middle of their segment, and they want to grow. And then you have a new agent who's struggling with just concepts of the company, of the corporation. They don't know what the acronyms mean. So I had to go in. I was a young manager. I think I was agency manager of the state of Florida my 3rd year. And I was very proud of that. I must have been, 34, 35 years old. Wow. But I had one funny challenge was I went into a senior agent. I wound up buying his agency 5 years later. He was probably 60 at the time. I'm 33. He walks in, he looks at me and he goes, Jay, can you live off $30,000, $40,000? And I go, no. I make more than that now. I can't live off that. He goes, well, then we don't have a lot to talk about. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, after if I look at my P&L and all that, my profit and losses, I'm down to 30. I just pulled 30,000. I go, really? Wow. I go, take out a piece of paper. Let's do an exercise. So he takes out a piece of paper. Now I'm young. I'm a young manager. And he's thinking, who's this young guy? I had that age.
What's this kid know?
But I knew how to relate to people. I had to learn that. So he takes out a piece of paper and I said, okay, how much you make? How much revenue? How much is your compensation, payroll? We'd start going through all the expenses. He ran a lot of personal through the business. So after the mortgage is paid, his summer home, 2 cars, vacations, payroll, taxes, on it, marketing, he had like 30,000 left of disposable that was not even accounted for.
Disposable
a year. So he had like play money after his investments.
Which is like 80 to 100 grand in today's money after inflation.
Correct. So when I showed him that, he got quiet. He's like, oh, he's got to be thinking, this guy finally showed me something and kind of understood me. He understood so the point was I had to deal with that. And then we got off to a good start and he started investing a little more. I had to break that barrier down. That might've been my first meeting with him as a new leader. Obviously the relationships got so good 5 years later when he retired, he came to me and says, you want to buy my book? When I finally got into the agency force. So, as an entrepreneur, but that was one example. A new one, I had new agents I struggled with. I had to go to my sales manager, Bob White, say, hey, give me some feedback. This is a brand new agent and she's giving me a lot of pushback. She says, I can't afford this and afford that. And so I had to really get some coaching on, you came into this business as you think about any of the capital requirements that would be needed at the time. These are things we should look at today and how can we get there? So it's just, I had all those different stages, and that's how I had to deal with it as a sales manager. But what that did, it got me ready to become an entrepreneur in this industry. It helped me. I don't know if I would have succeeded. I'm being real honest with myself. I don't know if I would have succeeded the way I did as an entrepreneur today if I didn't have that corporate sales management background. But I didn't just approach it as just a general, paint everybody the same. These are your numbers and walk in there and get your numbers and leave. That's not effective. That doesn't work. It doesn't work long term.
Mm. Wow. And here's something that I want to pull from you then on that topic. I'm sure we could talk about the big hitting, the top 3 agents you worked with. And like, I'm sure you pulled so many lessons from like the way they operated. So I'm, almost certain that it was like almost like a college education of sorts of entrepreneurship to observe some of those heavy hitters. Mm-hmm. Here's something that frustrates me, and I shouldn't be frustrated with it. I should really just learn to embrace it and learn to help people through this situation. And it almost saddens me. I talk to about a dozen agencies a day across the country, right? And a lot of them are very big-minded. They are willing to take risk. They are willing to take action today, not wait 2 months. Mm-hmm. But every day I connect with a couple of agency owners that I would consider to be, I mean this in a respectful way to them, right? Because I don't think they even necessarily know this, but they're in a small-minded place. Like they're living from a place of fear, and their whole thing about, well, I can't afford to do that marketing, right? I'll wait until next year. And then I'll talk to them a year later, literally, and they're in the same exact spot that they were 12 or 24 months ago. Or they'll hold on to that employee and say, well, they're writing 30 items a month, but I don't have enough payroll for another person, and I can't let them go because then I'll miss my target. And they're almost afraid to go through a challenging valley to come out 10 times stronger. And I could give you 100 examples, Jay, but there's just these owners that I speak with, and it seems like they're just kind of stuck in that rut of being enslaved to their business, and they're not making the move. And so sometimes I feel like, I can't be the one, you can't be the one to like pull them out of their own way. But at the same time, sometimes it does just take one person to say one thing and kind of wake you up. So today, if you come across an agency owner who's just kind of in that rough spot, like as an example, I'll talk to an agent like I'm trying to think of his name, John Pavel in Texas. Uh-huh. And he's like, hey, we built a $37 million agency off of internet leads. Mm-hmm. And we know the right touch points and the right science, and we can duplicate it like an assembly line, and we can scale $2, $3, $5 million in new business a year. Mm-hmm. And then 20 minutes later, I'll talk to an agent. Internet leads are a scam. They suck. They will never work for my business. It's a money grab. And it's like the polar opposite. Here's a guy who built an entire agency off of internet leads. Here's somebody else who says it's a scam. It'll never work. I'm not wasting my money. They're all scam artists, right? And you look at the way that those two different agencies operate. One approached it analytically, did testing, figured out a formula that works. The other one had one bad experience and forever just says that entire strategy is dead to me. But they do this in multiple areas. I'll never hire somebody like that again. I'll never try that again. And they just, instead of being open to testing things, it becomes a story of, I'm just going to sit still where I'm at. So it's a very long-winded kind of statement question, but I was trying to get you in the mindset of these types of agents you come across as a young leader. And as you came across agencies like that, I'm sure there was a level of conviction to say, like, can I save them and pull them onto the boat and say, like, wake up. So today, when there's somebody on here thinking like, and you know who you are, right? You're feeling kind of negative about things. You're kind of like, yeah, like I'm not too hopeful. Like I'm just kind of in a victim mindset or a negative mindset that things are always going to go wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, how would you encourage somebody like that? If you just pretend that I am that person and you're talking to them right now, right, how do you lift them out of that rut and like snap them out of it and wake them up if possible?
I encounter, I mean, you're hitting on all stuff that I deal with. I have a good agent groups. I have ones that I care about that are struggling mentally with that. Andy, if I was talking to you and you were in that space right now, I mean, the first thing I would ask is, what are you afraid? Where's the fear? Talk to me about fear. I'm feeling you're afraid. You live in that negative space because you're afraid of the outcomes. Have you thought about the outcomes in a year from now if you don't make change? I try to take them to the future. And the future, you can predict the future if you don't change. You really can. You can. Especially with the way Allstate, and not just Allstate, the industry is changing. We're in a changing world right now. We better embrace AI. We better look for the whys. We better look for measuring. We better look for the data. We better really figure out, if I'm going to get to where I want to get, how many quotes is going to be, how much talk time, how much people I need to invest in. You have to look at those numbers. What's the fear? To see the numbers first, and then I find a lot of fears, they don't have the trust. Like, again, back to the organization. or if you're waiting for the organization to reach out to you, to bring you along, that's not going to happen. They're just going to lead you within the structure where they feel going to take this industry to the next level. You have to embrace that. I have guys, I have an agent right now. He's in Dania Beach, and he texts me here and there. Oh, Jay, your numbers are good. And hey, tell me about that. And he always asks for this. And what are you doing here? And then when I start to give some ideas, the first thing he texts back is, oh, that's expensive. So now I'm thinking, okay, I know what I'm dealing with. A little bit of fear, but I'm looking for, he's not buying into investing in his business. Mm-hmm. So then you start to have those conversations. I always tell, the conversation I have with guys and gals like that is, are you an employee, or are you going to be, do you think you want to own? And meaning you really want to be an owner, not in title, but in leadership. And do you want to have something for the, do you really want to create something here? Do you want to create a family that you feed, right? Your staff could be, you could provide a family that you're in feeding, plus it's going to feed you. And at the same time, you're taking care of a lot of customers and helping them. So, those are discussions I try to have with them. I will tell you, it doesn't always work. It's frustrating. And I've been in the camp of, I guess I just ignore it, move on. I don't live in that space. My office manager tells me sometimes, Jay, you got to move on, but I'm so persistent. I keep going and going, and I do it with my staff until there's no return. Then I got to make a change. But there is a situation is the agents that live in that space, they got to get out of it. And it is a challenge. If we find if we find the pill for this, we will become very, very successful. I think Allstate's looking for that pill too. That we give, and it is difficult. It is, but I have lots that live in that space. And the other thing is, you spend time on things that are not there. They seem important to you, but they're not important in the big scheme of things. I think what it is they haven't figured out how to define their own value in the business, and they feel that's value. You got to replace yourself with that value and be okay. I don't write a policy in my operation no more. I only talk to clients that need to be handed off. I do the introductions, referrals. I'm going to give the little talk about what we do as a business, and I'm going to provide the service, and we're going to be here for you. And then I give them to my team. Yep. My role is not that. My role is to be the face of the operation, to work on marketing, the analytics, to stay positive, to surround myself with the top owners in this business, because that's how I learn every single day. I have learned from some of the best, the Sean Valleys, Greg Blanchard, Lisa Fanas. I can go on and on. I have learned from some of the best in Florida. Some outside, but mostly I kind of like stay in my Florida world, because we have our unique demographics with products and stuff. So, and I have learned from that. Surround yourself with those people. I was in a group for a while that became entirely negative, and I left it. Just nicely gone. I cut it out. And I'm only going to surround myself with owners that want to win for themselves. And if they want to win for themselves, I can learn from that, and I can win for myself and my client. The client's ultimate. You win for the client, you win. But I'm talking about the thinking for your business. And to go back to your question, Andy, I think you got to think about that. What you have to invest if you want to stay around, if you want to be relevant. And how are you going to replace yourself in that business and be comfortable with it? Until you start thinking and remove the fear, it is hard to get past it. It's hard, but you can do it. I get up every day, and I got my same thing. I do coffee with Jay. I go to the gym. I talk to my staff, talk to my managers, have like a huddle, and then I start thinking about one or two things that I can change personally and professionally every day. I have one or two goals within the business that I want to do differently for the business today, and not major change, little stuff. And then personally too, you have to have that positive thinking. I don't go on Facebook and look at some of the comments by half the agency force is totally negative. Yeah, they spend time posting that they can't get into the system. And I would have that conversation. If I can get in a room with all those agents, I would say, do you feel that's what you're doing? Is you're just looking for confirmation that you don't feel good. You just want everybody to agree. Yes, the system's not working. We get an email from Allstate. It's not working. We're working on it. That's all I need to know. That's all I need to know. Boom. move on. I got a call with Andy. We're going to talk about some telemarketing today for my business. We're going to talk about boom, move on. And that's where you get caught up. And I think they spend half the time in that camp. And I would tell them, and if I was in a room, if you're talking to you, Andy, if you stop doing that, you're going to be a happier person. I don't know if you're going to write more auto than more tomorrow, but even that here, because what we do as owners is all here. It's 90%.
Absolutely. And one of the things too that I'm picking up that you said was my team's going to feed off of that, something to that degree. And like the one thing that I've always seen is like we're in the business of hiring for a lot of agents too. And it's like they want an A player, but they're not willing to be an A player themselves. So like you have to be an A player owner to have an A player staff, because they will follow the leader and you will set the ceiling for expectations. And if you're the one challenging yourself, training, putting yourself out here on social media, right? If you want your team to be more visibly out there, you're first doing it yourself. You're setting the example. You're maybe they're seeing you make tough decisions, and just driving like that culture of excellence, right? Like reflects out everywhere. And so in our last like 9-ish minutes here, what I really want to focus on is your current team, right? As you operate across Florida and you've taken a huge notch out of the market and done an amazing job, not just from a production standpoint, but I would say the experience and the culture and the review set and everything you have. And you guys are that A+ agency. What are some of the building blocks that helps you keep consistent team culture? And like you were describing your team, it sounds like the A team. Like, what are some of the principles behind that in terms of their non-negotiables and what you expect from your team every day that drives that consistent growth, but also that consistent like customer experience? And then lastly, obviously the team culture too, so that it's like, hey, great team culture, great customer experience. And oh yeah, we sell a lot of stuff too.
Yeah, it's funny, and we did not talk, and we haven't talked in a little bit in a while, and these are things I just hit on in my meeting about culture, because I'm dealing with, I have one employee staff member now, been with me for a while, but the culture is changing. Not my culture, his approach is changing to my culture. And I'm a big sports guy. I know we don't have time to talk about it all, but I was at the Miami Heat game last night. I listened to Udonis Haslam's podcast and Dwayne Wade about culture and Pat Riley. And I talk to my agent buddy about it every day. He's like, I want to be like the Pat Riley. I want to have that ethics, that culture, that work ethic. And we started back on the segment this morning, an hour ago, and we started with that. Culture is everything. Okay. I set the tone for that. And I go in and I talk about they're not part, and I can show you the text to my managers. I'm like, this person that I'm struggling with right now, which I'm going to make some decisions because we've met, is the culture's not there. I don't want it to affect the culture. The culture is key. And that can mean a lot of things. But for my culture, my mission statement is we're going to come in, we're going to provide the best conversations and the best expertise to our clients every single day at a very extraordinary level. That's it. That is one big piece of my mission. And within that encompasses a lot of things. It's how I carry myself when I walk through the door. It's how I dress. Do I curse in front of my staff? Do I expect people at their desk not eating lunch? I have some culture. What's our work ethic? I don't want you eating lunch at your desk. You know why? I've not heard agents say, well, I don't like it because they're going to make a mess. That's not leadership. I want them to take time outside the office and get away from the desk and go and take a break. Mm-hmm. Think about your people. You're building a culture, not for always about you. Oh, I don't want bugs in the office. That's why they don't eat it. When I hear it, I'm like, that's really why you don't do certain things. You know what I mean? So building a culture is expectation. You don't waffle. You have a standard. This is what we do here every day. I don't want curse. I don't want slang in the office. I want you to greet. I had young staff where people would walk in when I acquired some agencies, they wouldn't get up and greet the customer with a handshake. They've never handshaked anybody before. It's a different generation.
Sitting over here. What can I do for you?
Correct. Just like that. Well, I said to them, culture here is we get up, we shake the hand. Mm-hmm. It's a respect thing. So it is creating that. You have to lead that charge. It comes from does start with ethics, does start with your beliefs, and it does start with what's your expectation of the business. And believe me, your team will respect you more when you do that. And they follow you when it's the right decisions and it's the right ethics, people follow you. When it's wrong, they might follow you, but they're talking behind you. You're talking behind your back as a leader, and you don't want that. So the Miami Heat is a great example of what I try to mirror. Sports is a big business, by the way. It's not just shooting the ball and winning games. It's more to it than that. And these are things that I try to take my pride on, is the cultures. If I have one staff member bringing down my culture, that can't continue. Got to move on that person. You get out. You're not part of my culture. I don't care if you do 50 cars a month, 100 cars, whatever numbers you need in your organization. I can go. We don't have time today, but I let a person go who was doing 50 cars and one was doing 10, but the ethics weren't there and the culture wasn't there, and I got rid of the one with 50. And I've heard my peers go, I don't know how you did that. Easy. You replace that because it's not sustainable, and you have to understand the big picture when you're running a business as a leader. Look at the Heat. They moved on Jimmy Butler. Star player. They're doing better without him. There's a great example. I've let some top producers go, and I do better when they're gone. So I can leave that at that. That culture is huge. Culture is humongous.
I love that. And it reminds me of, like, if you want to build, let's say, a Ford Fiesta versus build a Ferrari, like if your culture is a Ferrari and the way you operate is a Ferrari, you can't put aftermarket Ford parts on a Ferrari. So it's like you're either up to standard or you're not, but we're not about to have a hodgepodge Rolls Royce that has parts from 9 different vehicles. Like, you've got to fit the quality standard, or else it's going to start to look like a collage versus a culture. So I love that you're willing to stand on that. And, like, this is, in my experience from talking with you, not a revelation you had last year. You've been carrying yourself this way for over 30 years. So it's like, not only are you still standing here, not only did those tough firings of like 50 items, but like it's costing us our mental health as an agency and our ability to move forward. Like, not only are you still here, you're here strong and you're growing. And, I also see you as a guy who has a muscle to be able to make change and make tough decisions, because the first tough decision you make, and then the second, and then the fifth, all of a sudden that becomes a habit set of, I dive in, I make tough decisions. And so, maybe that's part of the answer as well for that agent who's stuck in a rut right now, is like, you just need to make one move on faith, like make one, watch the outcome. And then the evidence of that is going to show you that that was a good decision. And now you can make another tough decision, one after another. And like, I love that you stand on non-negotiables so hard. I think that's probably one of my biggest takeaways from this call today.
No, that's great. Yeah. And these discussions are great. I love these topics. It's the core of what we do. So I could talk, obviously we don't have time for all that, but I could talk for hours on these topics, and try to, help myself, help people out there listening, reach out anytime. This is what it's about, sharing and trying to all of us become successful in different ways, and have ethics, get rid of fear, embrace change, and start to trust, and you watch your career take off in this business. I
love it. And I know we could probably do another episode that's very boots on the ground, technical, how many touches on a lead, how do you get your team to answer talk times.
We could discuss these things in the future whenever if you want to have me on as a guest again. I'd love to share some of that and give what I've learned back.
That would be amazing. Yeah. And I think the tactical stuff is very important. There's a lot of tactical ideas that float out there, and I'd love to borrow some from you. Okay. But the other parts of that is, you can have the best tactics, but if you don't have the foundation with the right culture, like your non-negotiables and leadership style and building a culture is that, to the degree you can do that, is to the degree that you can take a vision and a tactic and actually execute it. And what I see is a lot of people trying to just pull in new tools in their toolbox, but they hadn't built the team or the culture of excellence to be able to actually execute. So I actually think this was probably a more valuable discussion than talking tactics, because I think there's a lot of agencies who. What's that?
I feel that way too. And I didn't mean to cut you off. Is that, I know we're limited on time now, that's called to me the shortcut. Oh, just give me the silver bullet and I want to go play golf.
Yeah.
No. What I'm building is the house, the foundation. We can put the furniture in, but we got to build this house first. But everybody wants the furniture. Give me the best lead. I get every day. Give me the best lead company. There's no best lead company. If there was one big lead company, Allstate wouldn't even need us. I mean, it's not like that. It's building what we just talked about. For sure.
Amen.
I'd be happy to talk about the tactical, but this to me is the arching important part.
100%. And even those of you out there that, haven't revisited this in a while, and you're doing well as an agency, right? But you're like, where's that extra 10% in the market? I've been beaten on new campaigns, new leads, and I just can't find it. Maybe it's not in the tactic right now. Maybe for you, it's going back and it's it's making that tough decision. It's cleaning up the culture. It's rebuilding your foundation as well, because it needs maintained at all times. So this has been incredibly valuable, Jay. I'm very grateful for your time that you would come in and share this with us today. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you, if you're open to it, what's the best place for them to get a hold of you? For sure. Best way to do it, a couple ways. I mean, I would say email me at Jay Esterson, so JayEsterson at allstate.com. Shoot me an email with your cell. I'll call you back. We could chat. Love the help. I help agents all the time. It's giving something back that you don't have to get something in return, to me, is the most rewarding thing to put my head down on the pillow at night. And I would love to do it because people have helped me with no incentive back, so to speak, with no agenda. Beautiful. Well, I will put that out in the chat as well. I really appreciate you putting yourself out there. And for everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to send Jay some love today for just the dynamite that he dropped. And really, like, if you look at the way that he's developed himself, one of the more unique agency owners out there in the market today, with his background on the corporate side, the HR side, the leadership side, and, you know, just the evidence, not only in your success, but the way you carry yourself and your team is right there for everybody to see. So congratulations on your continued impact. And I know you're going to keep plugging away. And for everybody watching, we will be back next week, same time, same place, for another episode. But Jay, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. Andy, a pleasure. Thank you guys, everybody out there.